Let me go on to Facebook and I'll tag you.
Okay.
There it goes. God, powerful, powerful times. Okay, here we go. Edit. Oh well, won't let me. I'll do it after the show.
Okay.
Let's make sure this is working. Yeah. All right. Let me get back on screen. Okay, so here we go. This was supposed to be, I think, like episode 38. But it became episode 32. And
Mm.
because I had figured I would do like in the old days, I'll set up five in the next 2.5 days, and I'm feeling the energy, and then boom, that energy came in that was like, just be still, take it easy. Um, but yeah, here we are. All these shows have been really, really good, and I feel like we're getting into something deep. But I just want to take a moment to welcome Ashtyn to the show about her, episode 32. And we're going to talk about uh, a lot of things, um, and try to bring some new perspectives and just try to honor this sacred space with some sacred, honest, real, transparent, vulnerable conversation. So
Mm.
thank you for coming in and joining me.
Thanks, of course, for having me. I'm excited about this. You and I know that this has been a long time coming. And even before we popped on the live stream, I was saying, like, oh, you could feel it. You could feel the alignment, it like drops like an anchor when it's really supposed to happen. And so those moments really tell me, like, yes. And so this is a big yes. And I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels for me too, because I can't really go into all of it because it's not relevant. But what's relevant is the way things are happening, like the way things are happening without force, uh, in this, I don't want to say timidness, but like this, how do we do this? These gingerly walking into this new space that we're creating with each step that we're taking, and honoring the synchronicities and the sequential, aspect of the way things roll out and the way it feels, right? So I was telling you before we came on that there's you and two others, uh, and I'll give them a shout out later, um, that I had been watching right before I kind of shut it down and took a hiatus. And all three were carrying kind of the same energy. Now I'm with Morgan 10 years, so I'm very familiar with the intel of the feminine, the divine feminine, through her daughters, so on, and many women that I've talked to, because obviously this is the energy that makes up the vast majority of these groups, be it in 2012 or today. They're 70, 80, 90%. Now, they don't all carry the same intel that I'm talking about because there's a lot of unique things that the feminine brings in. But I saw you and these two other sisters, and I started talking to you like, let's do a show. We kind of went, oh, yeah, back and forth. And then I took off. And I feel like that it was a good time to start opening it up and talking about the perspective, because in the earlier years, I would say probably, just thinking about the demographics of Sology and what I was observing in other groups, it was probably 80 to 85% 45 and over, maybe drop to 35 at some point. But there's a whole younger frequency coming in that's got a whole different perspective. And I think this is part of the integrating and converting that we're doing together. Um, so yeah, anyway, having said that, uh, how did you begin to tap in? I know a lot of people that came on the old show said I was born this way. It kind of got shut down. It came back out. but yours seems to be very specific to the divine feminine. And I
Mm.
would gather as well sacred sexuality and all the magic and power that comes from that life force, you know, that energy of creation. How did you begin to tap into it?
Mm. Yeah, first I want to say that I love that you were talking about sacred sexuality because I don't outwardly speak about it. I have things behind the scenes in my work that are very telling. And I think that, this is like the emanation, the frequency of the radiance, right? Like I can speak about things that are non-sexual and you can still feel the energy behind it, but not everyone picks it up in a way where they can reflect it. So I just want to say thank you for reflecting that. As far as your question, so similar to what I'm sure you've heard before, even though each individual's unique journey and story has its own kind of parts to it. Um, I did arrive with knowing I'm an extremely old soul. Like I'm a mother dragon to mother dragons, right? So I'm old, 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 old. And being in a child's body was a very challenging experience for me because I'm here priestess in child's body and have sight and wisdom that the people around me could not reflect back to me at all. And I think that this is an important part of this conversation that I would love to also drop into, which is a gaslighting of the feminine and the feminine knowing and her sight that is prevalent collectively. So when I arrived, I did have the ability to see and feel and know. And it also disturbed a lot of the adults around me. Like there was a lot of disruption. My core family system has a lot of, well, there's a lot I took on, right? There's a lot I took on in my ancestry. I have an adopted brother. And I also took on that side of the ancestry as well as my parents. And there's alcoholism, dissociation, entity possession, catatonic states, sociopathy. There's a lot going on there. And so, arriving into this life with the light that I have and the ability to see, and also this fierce feminine essence that's not going to waver, even in a child's body, was deeply triggering to those around me. And it became more and more challenging for my family because where they were agreeing to, let's say, some kind of entity contract, some kind of dysfunction, that entity would attempt to access me through my family. So I was dealing with a lot of that. And one of my first memories in the crib was seeing this disconnect between soul and body. I was like, oh my gosh, why are all of these people not in their body? And it became one of my biggest fears, like real literal zombies walking on earth. It became one of my deepest fears. So I'm kind of pointing to what it's like when we arrive with so much behind us, like so many lifetimes and so much wisdom, but then we're also having a human experience and we have a human developmental process associated with that. And so, not being able to put context to my experiences, some of that, and also the collective gaslighting, institutional education, right? It brought me out of my knowing, even though it was always backing me. I could always feel it there, even when I got far away from it. So I went through 27 years of extreme gaslighting. My dad's just a typical wounded masculine narcissist and also an alcoholic. And so there was a lot that I was dealing with at a human level. And I had a real interest in relationships. Like I was studying relationships when I was in elementary school. And it's because I could see the patterns, but no one could reflect back to me what I was doing and that I could travel consciousness. I could travel into subconscious material and shadow material. And like I knew the path forward. So ended up being that I kind of dropped into psychology because it was more relatable on a human level. And then I was in a relationship from 17 to 27. It was actually with someone that was my first kiss in sixth grade. So he was like a part of my family. My brother and him were best friends. He was also a narcissist and had a mother with Munchausen's. And it was also highly dysfunctional. And so I thought, oh, this is my saving grace. Like here's my true family and my mother. She's asking me questions about how I feel and what my day's like. And my family didn't do that. I was parentified, neglected child, right? I was raising my adopted brother. So I moved in with them when I was still in high school. A month after I turned 18, I'd been wanting to leave my house for a really long time. We were together dating from 17 to 27 and had an engagement, had a venue picked out. And I just could feel spirit. It was coming in hot. It was like, no, you cannot. You are too essential. You cannot go down this road. And I remember one day I even said to this partner of mine, partner said loosely, um, my grandma is everywhere. Like my grandma is everywhere. She's like telling me, you are here to heal this ancestry. You cannot repeat what has already happened. And then I had this moment. There was a lot of gaslighting and like a making me invisible. This is also an oracle wound, right? So it's like all connected. And so in that, I was jotting notes down. This is every time today that this man has made me feel invisible, hasn't responded to me directly. Because you think logic is going to solve the problem, which of course is not the case. And by 2 p.m., I had pages on my phone. So I went in my room and I sat down and I was going to write another note. And then it just hit me. It was like, I call these reality collapses. It's when actually truth, like reality descends in so deeply that it smashes the what we call a shattered mirror effect, which is a gaslight effect. And you actually descend more into reality. You can see clearly through the manipulation and all of these weird beliefs that might have been shaped and imprinted into your body suddenly are not there. You have space to see. And I've had these experiences. I had one of these experiences at age 11, which was my first Kundalini experience. And so it was like, okay, I have arrived. I am seeing clearly. And I went to say to him, this is what has been going on all day. And instead of being able to manipulate me, I was just firm, unshakable. Right. And I used to say, I'm like, it felt like an angel entered my body and I couldn't make sense of it. And then once I started opening up more to my ability to see and my kind of superpowers, I recognized that this was actually me. This was my angelic self, who is a time traveler that arrived in essential moments in my life, descended into my body so that I would go right, not left. I would take the divinely aligned path. And so there was an
How old were you when this
unshakableness
happened?
to that moment. I was 26. I was 26.
Okay. Sorry
And
for the
so
lag,
about
people. I wasn't interrupting her.
at the very end of 26 is when I left the relationship. So 27 is when all of a sudden I have what I call my first wave of awakening, even though I'd had experiences beforehand. And I started like I could see the sky. I could see color more. I could, I'm like amazed by water droplets on leaves. Like, this is the most spectacular thing I have ever seen. And that's when you really know you're opening up to life. It's not as much the grayness and the veil of the gaslight. It's like, oh, life is here. I am returning and I am turning on. And then, not to keep it too long, I'm shortening it up, I promise. About 2.5 years later, I came into a cosmic connection. That was a soul contract. And that became my second wave of awakening that just blew me wide open. So that's kind of my journey.
That was, there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack. Um, so how long ago was this? That's an indirect way of me asking how old you are. I'm sorry. I'm 63. I'll go
Oh
first.
no, no, I'm not, I'm like here to rep my age, right? I'm 39.
Right.
I just turned
Okay.
39
So
in
this is, yeah. So this is, yeah, you're on, people talk about 2012, and I know for others, because having talked to so many people on the old show, some were back in the 60s, right? I mean, but on or around 2012. For me, it was like
yeah.
2011, but I mean, on or around 2012. So 13 years ago would have put you right there.
It
There
was
was something huge.
2011. Yeah, it was
2011.
2011 going right into 2012 that I left the relationship exactly on time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And everything started to amp up from there.
Yes.
I want to go into some things that I had these things all in my mind and everything, which I kind of mentioned earlier, but now that this moment's came and after what we've just talked about, it's just coming out of the multidimensionality, right? This is what you're describing, the soul coming in, the angelic coming in, it coming in, being allowed to come in and be fully uh, here, present, conscious in the physical, in this density. Yeah. I really like the way you described it. But my question is, I have thought from time to time, upon reflection of 2012 through the end of 24, that 12-year period, almost like this 12-year, there's another 12-year period that's just started, you might say. This might be metaphorical, um, but an energetic description. That's going to be the same patterns without the distortion, distraction, other than what we have running within ourselves, you might say. Um, where the potential of the efforts that so many of us put out, all of us really, I will say this, let's just say on or about 2012 forward, the crazy people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that kept going, that 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 same momentum and pattern is kind of with us. And regardless of what goes on out here, our potential is there, which is which is to keep doing what we're doing. Why would we change after we busted through to the other side? You know what I mean? So I don't know. That was supposed to be a question, but I guess the way I would ask it is, do you feel like uh, we have entered a new space as we've gotten beyond that 12-year period, as we've come into 2025 or even up to this month? Because some people say uh, the first day of the year is March 1st or April 1st.
1000%. I call this the era of building because as I've witnessed it, there are multiple streams coming through. As I've witnessed it, we had this, if we look back at like 2012, right? There's a lot of ascension. There's a lot of focus on higher dimensions. And there's so many of us that needed to tap in at that level and in those layers, which is also why the feminine is so essential. She templates for eons before something comes into the physical. And so for example, women like me are aware that we're templating, that our wombs are creative centers. We hold sacred code. We're gatekeepers. We've been crucified for holding what we hold in multiple lifetimes. And still we show up and we show up and we continue to show up. This is also what I've seen with people who have had awakenings like that 2012, even some in 2014. And then that 12-year period that you're talking about. And so there's an opening, right? And in that opening, there was a lot of elevation to access the multidimensional. And this is necessary. We do see that with anything, there can be misdirection. And so some of that turned into um, ideas that we don't need the body, we don't need the material, we don't need the physical. I'm all about integration. That is my specialty. So, in this era, the era of building, it's more about dissension. What did you open up? What did you access? What can now be turned into material, substance, embodiment? What can be built, right? When we're looking at an old paradigm, we're looking at building from distortion, and then it creates harm. And then we have all of the debris and the static in the field and all of the systemic stuff that is dysfunctional that's surrounding us. And there needs to be levity and lightness and clarity, and all of that needs to come down here. The feminine in the ether, in the energetic, is the muse. If we look away from her, we're going to create distortion. If we erase her, if we diminish her, if we don't place her as an epicenter, it takes all of the, I also do divine level architecture work, takes all of the architecture out of its sacred configuration. And so, what we're looking at, and I teach about this extensively through my memory, but this is why I call it like the shattered mirror effect, because when you have the epicenter not in its divine right position, everything else is distorted. Everything from the center point of creation becomes a distortion. And so we are now looking to actually place the feminine essence back into her divine right placement and being the epicenter, because she is the muse, the mirror. It's the place by which we create and multiply from divine right harmony. But in order for her to do that, we need to open up all of that space in the ether and the energetic so that those divine codings can come down and into the body. And then when that starts arriving on what I teach as the horizontal plane, which we're talking about a vertical access and ascension, dissension, we have a horizontal plane that's like the surface of Earth, right? This is part where the material is created. And so this is where the essentialness of the masculine takes place. That's why I call it the era of building, because he is a builder. And he doesn't just build just in the physical. He is inspired by the ether and the energetic to create into the physical. But if we place the wounded masculine, which is what has been happening, the wounded masculine as the epicenter of all creation, what is the masculine going to pull from energetically to create material? The distortion. If we place the true feminine, not the wounded feminine, the true feminine at the epicenter, now being his divine right muse, okay, we can pull from the ether, which we opened and accessed in this ascension process 2012 and the 2024. And we can begin to descend that into the horizontal place so that he can touch it and he can feel it and he can live it. And so the masculine has a lot of initiation. Ooh, does he have a lot? I've been talking about this for a
Okay,
long
okay.
time.
No, no, that's I know without even saying it that there's so much code, and this is why I've, you know, we, how do you say it any differently? I mean, unity is unity. Jumping into this space, trying to be in a sacred space, to hear these channels, these conversations that have been held down to two and three and four and mostly just two people talking, and which has been rare and been more and more frequent. But the point is, everything you're saying, this is part of the intrigue that I had, because to hear what you have to say and like say with the reflection of what I've heard of Morgan for 10 years, I can see it. I can see the same thing being said from two, you know what I mean? Both feminine, both very, very intense, intensely chosen lives and specific ancestral lineages, with cross families, and all that to bring into alignment. Like this was big work. There's a lot of things that you said that really struck me, and I'm just going to go with the first one I can remember. And that was that you said the feminine in all of us. I'm going to say that because I have to feel this as much as my sister, my partner, all, you know what I mean? That's who I serve, the mother. I can't go any further than that. But my point is that when you said the feminine energy has been doing this for eons and eons and eons, creating templates far, far in advance. Okay. Uh, and that's where we've been and where are we now? Now we talked about this 2012 to 2024. Now here we are to my question. As you were explaining where we were, the ascension, the ascending parts, I could see like almost like you're coming from the center of the earth and you're just burrowing and all this rock is going everywhere. And you get up to the top and the way you described it, go back down now, see what nuggets you find that you can create from, as you move back up, right? So I was seeing all of that. And my question is to this. I've been exposed to women's groups with Morgan for like 3 years. I've participated in a lot of her groups. Mostly there'll be women there. I've talked to some other sisters. I talked to Maya Matiklar a couple of days ago on the show about it. I saw that and I've seen the magic of it. I've seen the anchoring and the embodiment of it and the real time connection to what energy is coming in at that moment that I never really understood, but a lot of the women write about it. This is what's happening. This is what I'm getting. So my question is, what are your thoughts, or what is your experience, or what have you observed or done in terms of groups, like women's groups, even if they weren't official or formal, where you're connecting and relaying this information and sharing code and doing the actual things that you described they've done for eons and eons in the flesh as a conscious human in an awake state in this unity consciousness and utilizing the same templates that they'd been that they had been working on all these eons. I see this, Morgan and I have been talking about for the last few days, and I see this is like a superpower. This is like you don't need any press. You don't need any, you know what I mean? This is like anchoring uh energetically in the physicality by this silent majority, right? That's coming out is how it feels to me. Does that make sense to you? Do you see as part of this dissension being doing it very physical as opposed to be out there in the ethers doing all of our work?
Yeah, and this is the transition that I'm really speaking to is there's been so much of etherically templating. And because I'm as integrative as I am, one of my superpowers is to teach and speak things that are multidimensional and then bring it through all of these layered spaces to include relationships and relational dynamics. So it's like, how do we apply these etheric templates to this physical human based reality to make it real, intangible? Because that's really what we're here for, is to anchor it. We need to anchor it. We can't just like let it sit in the ethers and go float around and play in that place. It's lovely to be there, but if we want it to be in our lives every single day, then we have to do the work of descending it, and that's not easy. This is not an easy process. It's not even fluid, because when we're touching things up here, clean, clear, this is what women are saying. They're receiving. You can feel them receiving it because it's so fluid and clean and clear as it's arriving into her and speaking and flowing through her. But the process, the everyday moments that a lot of people don't see behind the scenes, and like what that really takes to bring these things down to ground, when we're pulling pure, clear, true information into a field of broken architecture and distortion, just like you do ancestral work, right? You're bringing in truth and healing. It's not an easy process. You're going to hit up against all of the debris in the field. And you, in your own individual process, have to move that out of your body. You have to move it out of the relational plane. You have to move it into the community where we can start forming communities that don't bring in loops. Like an example, because we're talking about women's groups, right? So in women's groups, okay, if you're bringing a bunch of women together that are powerful and they're priestesses, well, what can also happen? Past replays of the destruction of temple and sister wounds and the betrayals that have happened can come into that space. Also, any priestess's patriarchal imprints that devalue the feminine, whether she knows she's holding it or not, she can project it onto other women in that space. And typically, it's the woman that's holding the clearest, purest, truest, most anchored field that gets the most directed violence at her. And this is why it's been challenging to hold groups in larger and larger and larger numbers. So for me, I have, for example, my membership group. This is a small, intimate group. You have to apply, you have to do an interview with me. Like, this is a genuine temple space. Again, I do divine level architecture. So this is a true temple, truly restored here on earth. And I'm gathering people in that space, but I do it very discernibly and I do it incrementally because every person that comes into the space have their own process. They have their own codes. They bring such magic into the space. We all carry, even when it seems like we're carrying similar templates, we still have different things that are coming in. And so I'm moving at the rate that the physical will allow. And I can see in this era of building that there are going to be more and more pathways, just like we did in Ether, carving out pathways for the fluidity of the information to come through. Same thing will be and is happening on ground. And so we have to like be willing to not bypass, not try to jump forward, but move at the pace of what is arriving in each and every moment. I don't know if that answers your question, Todd, but that's where
No, no,
the
just
information was
yeah,
coming.
just let it roll, you know. I mean, this is yeah, I mean, I feel like this space for me and we do reflect what we reflect, right? I mean, it's part of the physicality or the embodiment or anchoring that we're doing, the work that we're doing, the new code we're doing, whatever. Um, but I feel like it, you know, you go into this space and you just let it go. You know, when you were talking about, for instance, the feminine and that experience, the way that you laid it out, and I know they must, I'm not her, but I've been around one for 10 years and I'm seeing things and there's timing, synchronicities. You have a conversation on a show like this, and I remember talking to Morgan the last 3 nights, and you see all the things that kind of fall into place, right? You know what I mean? It's like the past and the present and the future all combined, and you get that whatever you called it a while ago. But the part where, okay, so I had this the other day, and you talked about ascend. We ascended, descending. I've heard Mateus de Stefano say the exact same thing. You cannot ascend without the descent. So it's a constant, like the like a scale. Um, and so, hang on, let me get it back. I had like three coming in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I said it's like I'll put it in terms of what you said. It's like the human went embodied into the soul. So you said the human went out there and grabbed all these innate connections and you know what I mean and fortified its soul and now it's flipped and it's almost like the soul is getting having to get used to being human. And that's where the conversion is. That's where the physical experiences that we're talking about, be it a group or a relationship or whatever, that's where the litmus test is. That's the real birthing ground. That's the fertile plane of the holy womb. That's because it takes in all elements to include the holograph, the whatever you want to call this, whatever it is. But we're here and we're conscious. And we have all this information and we can actually utilize it in any moment. And the fuel seems to be natural, um, nature, love. Like you said, you know it, you feel it. Like there's something there that's overriding everything. And I think a lot of people like us and the people that listen can relate to being very atypical over the last 12 or 15 years with their family, with their friends, changing lifestyle, all these different things, crazy things that don't even make any sense. But we did it, and it's been, I think, maybe at least at a minimum, the build up or the work before the foundation or something of this new grid, as we might put it in metaphorical or literal terms. But I really want to get into vulnerably, transparently, doing my best to represent. I'm incarnated as a masculine, um, to bring those to bring those two sides together at that nexus point that I just described, where we're doing it in the physical, where we have all the different parts of our active consciousness, to include our ego, even if it's playing a lesser and lesser role, the mind, the heart, this and that, to where we actually talk about it, because I really feel like that it's not the words, it's the intention or the resonance from the voice box, you might say, that brings the words out. So what I'm saying to you is, when you said that, at some point you said something like, this is where she's coming from. This is what she's been doing. Now she's landing in her body. And it's, like I said, the soul trying to get used to being a human. I call Morgan galactic. I feel very organic. I can see something going on there that I can't relate to. And so I'm learning to see that space for what it is. It's mysterious. It's beautiful. It's magical. It's the holy darkness of the mother's womb. I recognize it, and I know what you had said earlier in the video I shared actually in Sology today, that a woman talked about this, or what the masculine energy is here for and what it's doing. And that was beyond the terms holding space. It was allowing. It was creating an environment where that part of us, she can feel safe to be her, even in this wild transition where the soul's landed on a planet and going, what the hell am I doing here? So that's kind of where I'm at. And I did a men's group in January, and I learned a lot, and I want to jump back into it, but I don't have any idea what to do. I feel like this is the very uh, final point of what would you say, code sharing or integration or whatever you want to, or dissension, whatever, where the masculine and the feminine not become one, but become equal halves, that type of thing. Something I've been involved with in my connection in the ride we've had. I really feel like that power is something that's come to a point where the writing's on the wall, walk the talk, which is to allow that feminine energy to come out no matter what. You know what I mean? Final analogy.
Oh, I know, a
And
thousand
I
percent
don't mean
what
to
you
I don't
mean.
mean to beat men. I don't mean to beat masculine men up, because I'm an advocate. But just an analogy. If we have allowed, for whatever our different explanations are, for the masculine energy, we might really say it's a patriarchal, but for whatever, to create this destruction, death, da, 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 all that shit, then why would we not allow that on the other way? Why not allow that pendulum to come in and sweep all that away? Yeah, you might go to an extreme light or extreme whatever, but that's what I feel like is probably happening, whether we think we have anything to do with it or not. Thank you.
I
Sorry.
mean, yes, 1,000%. Love so much of what you shared, Todd. And the thing is that there are unique perspectives from men who have had divine feminine partners in their life that, as I witness it, are the masculine leaders of the new paradigm because it can't come in any other form. The feminine has to be included. She's been erased. And so the men who include her in their lives and they begin to understand the feminine mysteries just through being around a woman who is an emanation of that and then relating with her at a human level as well, they have perspectives that if you don't have that opportunity, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of us like myself that are single out here and we are high level template, and feminine that can provide so much, but there's a resistance to the transition. And as I witness it, the masculine um, faces the challenge of resistance far greater and in different ways than the feminine does. I can't go so deep into that because like there's so much teaching, right? There's so many layers here. But with that being said, on the other side of it is reception, which is interesting, right? Because there's a lot of teachings talking about how the feminine needs to be more receptive. And it's like, no, we're going into integrative evolution. The masculine needs to learn how to be more receptive to actually receive her. Where she's not received, she's not safe. Where she's not received, we can't take what she holds in ether. And the masculine can't be in his role of receiving her in order to anchor it, in order to found it, including relationally. There's a
Yeah.
constant resistance to her she can feel.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what I was saying. What I was saying was, okay, I'm going to try to make my own analogies because I do think there's a blend of language. I do. I've lived this, you know, with Morgan, and I see it in the work that I've been involved in. But it's almost like this. Like, God, I could go so deep into some of this stuff. It's bringing so much stuff back in terms of my own masculine journey from my own perspective. Let's put it that way. In my feminine, my relationship with it, and this and that. But I've tried everything else, right? I've tried everything else. Um, Allow it. Just allow it. And how do you do that? Well, you know what? I don't know, but I do know this. Don't do anything you've done before. Just step back. And if you have to step away or whatever it is to get that personal reflection, that personal power, that personal, and be there. Um, it doesn't look like anything I've seen before, and it's moving like, like molasses, but like powerful molasses. And I'm going, holy shit. I was telling her this, I think last night. And I'll tell you something. I'll share this with you. This was we lay down every night, and I think people, to your point, uh, people think that Morgan and I, for instance, are like you know like a Disney fairy tale all the time. We're people. We're going through the same thing everyone else is going through, right? We're in the same place. We're in the same band of frequencies individually, and then you got so it's not all, there's two sides to everything. But my point is, in the last 2 or 3 nights, as I'm laying there, we'll do a session and she usually channels, I might say a couple of things, and then we drift off. That's how we go into sleep. And I think actually 3 nights in a row, uh, the messages come into my body because my body has had a real issue for 2 weeks on the right side. I twisted my ankle like I never
Mm.
had before. It was swollen like a house. And then all of a sudden, I had this weird bacteria get into my nose and go into my eye. It's like you can see it now.
Mhm.
So, and,
Mm.
and I'm watching it all energetically. And at the same time, she's kind of experiencing the same thing prior to me, which makes sense because she goes first, right? On her left side. So I'm like in this state of, you know what? I just got to focus on me. If I make myself good, everything's going to be okay. But what came in over like the last two, 3 nights, and I'm just thinking of this, and I think it's a good time to share it, is as I was laying there drifting off, I could feel like my body was split. I told Morgan, like my body was split, like my left side, what you might call my feminine. If I just moved over there 100%, I was like, I am soul. Like it was just right. If I moved to my right, it was very, very dense and I could feel everything. I could feel every little, sore coming up. I could feel my eye, I could feel my leg. Um, and what happened was several times I got this intel that was like, do you feel your constrictions on the right side of your body? And I'm like, oh, okay. Take a breath. And what it was like this deflation of stress or locked up energy on my masculine side, holding up the world when I don't have to anymore. And in this conversation, even what the video that I shared on Facebook earlier with this woman, I kind of came to the point or a high understanding of, oh, if I let go, she flows. If I'm relaxed, she's relaxed. Oh my God. And so I just remembered this too. So last night, uh, she was up early at 4:30 in the morning. So she went to sleep early. And we had a powerful session and a conversation. So I was like, I was still kind of awake and I was in pain and I was getting all the vibes and everything. I end up, she's sleeping on her back and I'm kind of like not in fetal position, but turned on my left side facing her, my good side, my feminine side, because my right side's all fucked up. And kind of like you would be like, like an embryo, just incubating or just in total hibernation. And I thought, wow, this is weird. This is weird. I don't have any guards up in the world. Look at this space that's happening. That's why I appreciate moving into a space on how we feel, intuition and such, and going with your gut or however you want to put it, and saying, hey, sister, do you want to come on and share some space and see what happens? I really feel like that this is where we gain. So when you start talking and going, there it's full of code. And I can promise you your sisters out there are very aware of that and more men every day. Thank you.
I have so much I want to say, so many layers and levels of what you just spoke. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience because this is a part of that ground level sharing, right? Oh, there's so much juiciness. Okay. So, yes, it is very evident that I'm a representation of the true feminine. And I say, you cannot come into being in the true masculine nor the true feminine without the integration of the other. It's not possible. Like wholeness demands it. And so this means that I have a very deep connection with my masculine and I work with men and I'm able to see them and meet them in ways other men cannot because I am within this true masculine element that lives in the right side of my body. Now, when you're in the leading edge of the leading edge, of course, you're going to go first. And so I have been running energy through my body and working with the masculine side since 2020. And in that, I'm literally going through masculine initiation. I'm carving out pathways for men to step into masculine initiation as being the feminine that goes first. And so I talk a lot about masculine initiation and what that is like. And things that you're talking about here and sharing are so on cue with that. The physical piece, I've been saying, men, be prepared because the physical piece for you is different than it is for the feminine. And there's a lot of things that are going to come up through the right side of your body, through your lungs and the heart space of what I call the missing masculine heart. There is an actual energetic heart that is being returned architecturally to the masculine side of the body, because that is masculine feminine integration. She has the physical of the masculine, the physical heart on the feminine, which is the unseen, and he has the energetic on the unseen, right, side. So, or the unseen heart on the masculine side, on the physical side. So, anyways, there's these things that are going to come up in the physical body, of course, as more men move through this natural unfolding that they're being called into. There are things that I heard you speaking to that are essential, such as letting go, which is surrender, opening up, receiving. All of those things are considered to be feminine. But again, if the masculine is going to come into his wholeness, he's going to have to learn some of the terrain that the feminine just naturally is moving through ongoingly. And so that is a surrender, that is an opening up, that is a letting go. And this is also a returning to the mother. It is returning to the origination of all of creation, which is the original womb. So when you're talking about going into, I already saw it before you said it. I was watching your own process as you were speaking, right? And
Mm.
so, in order to see himself, I say, in order for the masculine to know himself, he must know her. He can't know himself
Okay.
without knowing her because she is his
Yeah.
origination.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Like it was like 3 or 4 sentences ago. I was like, oh my God, boom. And then you kept going, it's the same thing, but it's the same thing. And I feel like where my efforts to serve are huh, is that nexus point. Like, I'll say again, like since January 1st, everything's changed. And Morgan and I were separated for 37 months, 38 months without sharing the same bed. End up in Mexico. Incredible energies, collectively for us. I mean, it was a ride that last half of last year. It was like whatever. And then the next starts, right? And all this stuff starts coming up through the body, and it's crazy. The multidimensionality, like you mentioned earlier, I've got several streams coming in. The human multidimensionality. Forget the other ones. I mean, it's like the stuff that's coming in there, and there's all these. I don't want to say divergent in the sense that they're working against each other, because I don't believe that's the case. But there's all these divergent, boom, 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 boom things coming in, and it's exhausting sometimes. Like for a day. Like we had this huge day on the 4th. It was just incredible. It was every range of everything, and it was amazing. Um, and then you're depleted. And then you're like, okay, what's going on? You know what I mean? But through it all, and this is just a picture of my soul's perspective as the observer, as the oneness, as the unity conscious, the one eye that we all are. My, futile effort to say it in the human is that my appreciation, my love for Todd Medina, even though I know I'm not Todd Medina, my appreciation for Morgan Lee, my appreciation for us, my appreciation for this, my appreciation for all the connections made, in the ethers, in the internet, in the last whatever. I mean, it's there. I can feel it. It's like walking out to the beach here, like you were talking about, and seeing the dew on the blade of a leaf. It's seeing all that. It's like all of it's coming. And at the end of it, I'm going, um, it's like the human. It's like when I met Morgan, I am soul guy. I am soul. I'm not a human being. I am soul. And then she said to me, well, you can't find your soul until you find your human. And I'm like, oh shit. So then I went down the zero pointing track, and then, as so many people can relate to. And then you find your soul again. And now I feel like what you said about the ascension, dissension, right? Now, and dissension is just from the human perspective, a negative connotation, right? That it's, I am soul. Oh yeah, well you got to find your human. Boom. Okay. And then you go through that. Oh, now I am soul, and now we come back to find the human's soul. And that's what I feel like for me is the nexus is is right here, right now, all streams wide open, the channels, the chakras, the five senses, and otherwise. And something's happening from the heart out through the voice. And this is kind of the stuff I'm tapped into with her and the work she does. But as it correlates to what's at a minimum becoming available in the collective. And we all know that what we're gaining more and more and more in the moment, we can apply virtually in the moment. Like it changes everything. Like I don't care who I was yesterday. I mean, I walked away from Sology. And that's not to make some kind of like social, no, I love Sology. It's like my heart aches for it, but my soul has said, go over here, right? This is the kind of energy that we're in, and it's mind blowing and it's humbling. And I totally got off track on the masculine feminine thing, but I guess what I was going to say to you, I could have just said it. As a male in form, let me say it this way. I saw this video today. I could play it. It's like 4 minutes. And the woman says, this is the masculine's role. And basically what she says is, nothing happens until the feminine steps fully in her power. Now, I heard Morgan say this 4 or 5 years ago. We were hanging around couples and stuff, and we, reflect as humans would do and whatever. Nothing happens until she steps into her power. It, but what you were saying today, she, in the physical embodiment, will step into that power because she is most innate. She is nature. She knows when to. And we're working on creating that space. And so this lady was saying basically that the masculine energy is in rare cases the leader, but the one that builds, the one that holds, the one that allows. I mean, it was like, and it was actually a question she put to an AI, which was pretty, which is another twist. But I mean, the point being, we know that part of us been suppressed, and um, it's obvious. We can't see him. He can't see himself until she is fully visible to herself and everyone else. So where there used to be a thing where, oh, he won't tell me his heart. No, it's different now. Yeah, he wants to, but he don't know what's in there. You know what I mean? Like it's a reflection, right? So this is the kind of energy I think that we're in, and it can be explained in a lot of different ways, but I really feel that a dialogue, and I'm not saying me, but like a man, as much as we can encourage it to come out and have this dialogue and say, yeah, I get this. I want to do this. We both want to get to the same place. I don't know how to do it. And the last thing I'll say is this, Morgan said for a long time, I don't know. I mean, like years. I don't know if it's going to be harder for him to come down or for her to step up. But I think that's
Mm,
probably the best explanation. And again, how do you do that? The only way I can see it, maybe because I'm the masculine energy, is take a step. At some point, when everybody's like going, okay, what do we do? Just fucking take a step. Because if you have the right intention and your heart is open, yeah, you're vulnerable. Yeah, you're transparent. Yeah, you might get your ass kicked, but at least you're infusing that courage or that, that step or that initiative. And maybe that's the new masculine. I don't know. But it's good to even be able to have this type of conversation. And thank you for allowing me to speak these things spontaneously.
of course. Yeah, you're a valuable voice. And I think it's so beautiful what being in shared space can also create, right? Because we can be saying similar things, but then we're using our own voice to amplify what each person is sharing. Um, so let's back up just a little bit to some things that you had just shared. Yes, 1,000%. The feminine is needing to really be in full reclamation with her essence. And this is difficult because women are gaslit completely out of what the feminine is. Like, just to even begin to be, oh my gosh, this is what the feminine is. Like, there are so many layers of that. I work with women and high level women, priestesses, right? And this is a process. And how the masculine can support her in that is this safety factor that we were talking about. Because when I was saying the masculine relates to resistance energy differently than the feminine, when he opens up, when he creates space, when he lets go, when he allows in, he is actually lessening the distortions in their shared space. The masculine that is patriarchally attached is going to be the most resistant. He is going to hold on to those attachments like he's holding on to his power, which is really false power, and a patriarchal paradigm that creates harm for everyone, including him, whether he sees it or not. Even if he thinks he's leveraging it to his advantage, he's not. And so he'll hold and hold and hold. It's like, oh, this energy, right? Well, the feminine, when she is bringing these templates, when she is coming into her power, those are the things that attack her. This is why you see on my social media, even though I delete the comments, I get attacked all the time. I get personal messages, particularly from men, attacking me because I'm the true feminine. So it doesn't feel safe to her to arrive into her power with all of this, the distortions and the men that support it, that bring war to her temple doors. So the men that create that space, they're doing the work of deconditioning, deprogramming. They're doing the work of moving from false egoic structures into true identity, which is closer to the true masculine. And they're doing so by actually being in a space of reception with the feminine. When there's reception for her, her process of arrival is so different. This is also why divine partnerships are so essential. Because at least in that partnership, if there are these kind of healthy dynamics in place, which by the way, these are high alchemy relationships. And I wanted to mention this earlier when you were talking about your relationship with Morgan. High alchemy relationships oftentimes are romanticized and idealized, but we need to understand they are high alchemy relationships.
Mm.
You have to have higher level communication skills, relational dynamics. You have to do more ancestral work. Like, you are held to the fire, unlike other relationships. So it's not just all romanticized and butterflies and, meadows and all of that. Like that's just, that's an idea of what it is without living what it is.
I think it's a lot like our soul's journey. I think it's, when we, you know, it's not about enduring something, right? It's about, like you said, showing up, even when it didn't make sense. I felt like, and Morgan will tell you, I mean, I was fucked this morning with everything going on. I'm taking all this medicine. I'm just like, but
Oh, can I share
you
something,
show.
Todd? Because I have so been
Yeah,
wanting to say it, and I feel like I'm going to forget it again, and I don't want to.
go ahead, please.
Um, when you're talking about your eye, and I was tracking it with you, I was feeling it. I was like, oh, he's up leveling into God's eyes. Oh, that's so beautiful. So that's the term that I use for it, which is it's even like it's literally the distortion, the filters, the veils that have been put over the masculine to keep him out of his divine right power and his ability to actually see her. And it just swells up. It's in grief pockets because there's grief attached and it's attached to the heart. But it's like I can just feel this thing that's wanting to arrive through you with this process physically happening. Like once the inflammation goes down, I sense that there's just going to be veils just fucking dropping, like
I've
in
been,
the beautiful,
it's,
powerful way.
but yeah, this is like, it's like, I relate to this. I've watched it with Morgan, okay, since late December. And then mine started coming in. And hers is seems to be like, the seed is starting, the sun is coming, it's like you can see it. It's not just the physical, it's all of it, right? And it's interesting because we went to Kauai in like 2018, late 2018. We met in Hawaii, in Kauai. So we were living out of a suitcase, literally day by day, buying rent day by day. So anyway, we were there a couple of weeks. We go to this hotel and we get into a hot tub. And it was like 10:30 at night. We just checked in. We go, oh, there's a hot tub. Let's go in. And Morgan, we're very polar opposites. She sees a sign and it says pool and hot tub close at 10. She goes, oh, we're gonna get in trouble. I'm like, man, fuck that. But she gets out, we get out. We're only in there like 5 minutes. Well, something happened. And of course, that's the physical explanation. We're in Mother Kauai. We all know what that is. I mean, and so anyway, we went through, I think she had 13 days and I had 17 days. She started with her and it was from the lower chakra all the way up. Physical. I mean, grueling, like just painfully grueling. And about, before she finished, I started and it went on again. Now I know that's not the exact same time frame, but what I'm trying to say, there seems to be, and we've been talking about the last couple of days, and I said to her, you realize everything's on your left side that you're having an issue with, and everything's on my right side. And given all the stuff that we're both getting individually, but there's something to that. It doesn't mean like, oh, let's be cognizant of each other. It doesn't mean that, but it seems like we're moving that direction. And as the individual goes, so goes the collective. So it feels like that to me. Um, and so anyway, I think, for me, as I look to like say, give a greater voice to what I can even think I might know of or whatever or convey of the masculine in this at this point in time, like through the human masculine male journeys and all that stuff. And believe me, for all of them, there's a whole bunch of stuff he hadn't talked about. But I believe, even though she had to go to those depths, right, to really embody, right, he may not have to. And I think the answer lies in, hey, instead of looking anymore, because we just have a different way of processing and experiencing it as she does, our shadows, our darkness, all that shit, right? Um, how about let's focus on what can we do to allow this space, which has been suppressed in ourselves and overall, as within without, what can we do to allow that? Let go of the stories, let go of the pain, let go of the constrictions. And like I was saying, these last 2 or 3 nights with her, it's been like, oh wow, I can let go. I can, and I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. It even related. I smoke sacred tobacco, right? I buy it from this dude here in Mexico. So my right leg's messed up. I'm sitting in this chair. I came in here last night to roll I got a little roller machine, and I just traditional roll a couple of cigarettes, sacred cigarettes. And as I'm doing it, I can feel all the weight my right side's carrying. And even though it's the one in pain, particularly my foot, I can feel it like a natural acceptance, like a second nature. And then my left side go, hey, let go. let go. So
Mm,
now I feel all lopsided and all my weight's on my left side, and I'm doing everything with my right hand as my left side would normally function, which is like the finesse, the artistic, the softness,
mm,
the flow, the you know what I mean? I thought,
mm-hmm.
wow, this is weird. So something's got to be happening, or at least available in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you talk to, do you run into many, late 20s, 30s, 40s, and I know age doesn't matter. Are you seeing more young men out there that are tapping into this?
100%. I
Oh,
can
wow.
feel it. I can feel that that's happening. Um, but something that I want to reflect as I was listening to you, which is like deeply valuing you in this physical process, because when you are leading the masculine in this way, including in these physical processes, it's not just a personal thing. We know that we're doing collective work as well. And so the amount that is moving through your body as you're doing that, you are carving pathways for men that move into that process after you, just as I did. I literally nearly almost died doing that on part of the masculine.
Let me just say this. Let me just say this.
Yeah,
That's okay. Connect a dot.
yeah,
I watched her go through
exactly.
that for a 3-day period. One of the most horrific episodes I've ever experienced. One of the most deepest dimensional, multi-dimensional, just, I mean, multi-human dimension. So my point is simply this, and I want to give, you know, credence. That may be true what you're saying about me, but it's because I witnessed it. And
Exactly.
because
Thank
as
you.
I was witnessing it, I, you might say, figured out what to do.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. So when
Okay.
you're talking about the masculine not having to go to the same depths, this is 1,000% true. And when we're looking at this from the ether to the material and different terrain between masculine and feminine, I saw an interview that you did with someone, I can't remember her name, but I was like, oh, I would love to bring this up and this conversation with Todd, in the sense that when I was speaking to the feminine doing this templating work for eons, okay, that those eons back him. When he steps in, there becomes a quantum leap, which is interesting because we're talking about the material, but that is integration. So his process, and I've said this for a long time, it is expedited. It goes faster because she sets the groundwork for him to step into all of that, to then move through it himself. So something that I like to acknowledge, which is what you're doing here in this way that you're doing it, is the feminine and her contribution. Because oftentimes what has happened is when the masculine creates something in the material, we're like, oh my God, congratulations. It's all happening in the physical. Look at all of these things that the masculine did. And it's like, okay, but the only way that he did any of that is because of her investment that came before him. And it was honestly a greater investment. It took longer. It took more devotion. It took more even inside of her body. It took more lifetimes. There's all of this that she's living in the unseen. And just because it's in the unseen doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge it. This is a part of what the patriarchal matrix has used to its advantage to erase her and
Yeah.
diminish.
Eons and eons and eons of templates. And
Exactly.
again, going back to this nexus point, I don't know how to drive my piece of it right yet. I mean, that's a multi thing too, right? You're a soul, you're a sacred, you're Trinity energies, um, but, um, I don't see any other way. I don't know how to make it happen. I think there must be something to the natural nature of her because it is all her, right? And as we've gone into this, not just a polarity, not just a 3D, but a flipped, inverted, distorted, a dualistic polarity. That's a whole different set of, you know what I mean? And we're
Mm-hmm.
coming out of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming out of this stuff. Fuck GMOs, fluoride, chemtrails. We're actually all of it. And that's the consciousness that, but what is that equation? And so I think, okay, this has been my observation, and which is part of the reason I wanted to talk to, say a series of younger sisters that are tapped into, seemingly to be tapped into the same thing I've been seeing in these women that are older, is is on or about 2012, mama landed, she's home, blah, blah, blah. And there was this whole progression for like 5 or 6 years. Wasn't any mention of the masculine other than hurry up, motherfucker. You know what I mean? That type of thing. Uh, but, and I say that seriously and in jest, but, and then something started to change. And then it really changed at 2020. And I guess what I'm trying to say is the masculine part of us, what I represent in the physical incarnate, is so, I don't want to say conditioned because I'm not a victim, but I mean is so inclined to do something, right? About it. You tell your boyfriend, hey, I got this problem. Oh, let me fix it. No, no, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to know I got this problem, right? It's that old age thing, right? So I really feel like for me anyway, in this moment over the last few days, whatever that's happened in the last couple of 2, 3 months, is that as the masculine energy to come into the room, observe, look around, listen, allow her, allow whatever else is playing in, just kind of be there. And almost like it's not softer, it's steadier. It's like stabilizing. It's like, um, yeah, it's like that. And it's weird because you don't get, oh my God, look at him. He's in the Hall of Fame. Or, look at him. You know, it's, it's this, hey, I know the universe sees everything. I don't need to prove anything. And we're in new territory. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the best way I can describe it. So the last thing I would say is it's obvious to me that, or for me anyway, it would seem important to, let's just say, if I were to do it today and make like a documentary, um, to promote the idea of, hey, um, Morgan used to say this years ago, as we were unraveling, she would explain things. She blamed him, he blamed himself. So if
Mm-hmm.
you think of that energetically, where's the onus? And there's that constriction in the way. So one message would be, or half the message would be, let's give him that space so he can give you. You know what I mean? In other words, I can't give you that space if I'm still, my sphincter muscles are tightened and I'm constricted, and you know what I mean? Like I'm still feeling the echoes or whatever. But a lot like what I experienced for the last 2, 3 days. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen? Um,
I mean, I'm
you know,
witnessing you in it as you've been saying, well, you've been using some masculine words in moments where like, oh, well, how do I do that? And I'm not sure that I know how I do that. And I'm watching you be. And so you're being right inside of the process. And that's the essential part in this right now. Does that mean that his doing doesn't come back around as it has recalibrated to a state of being? There's so much. I have a whole body of work that talks about the masculine held, the collectively masculine held nervous system, because ultimately the masculine is responsible for the collective nervous system. That's a really heavy weight for a lot of men because just their own nervous systems, right, need to be calibrated. And so this is a part of that process. In the being, what you're talking about, that tightness in the body, right? It starts to relax. There starts to become space. And the space also becomes reception. And there's a softening for the feminine that she can meet him in that space where when it's restricted and there's also resistance, she can't make her way to him because he is responsible for lessening that resistance in the shared relational space. And so when we look at it from like a personal process, when we do our nervous system work, we're coming into that relaxed state and we're calibrating to a slowness and a being, which is feminine integration. Inevitably, that'll support our creations. We can do. We can do things and do in ways that we couldn't before when our nervous system was. So, where I witness us collectively at this time, and where I witness the masculine, including the leading edge masculine, which I view you as, it is more about that being space rather than the doing space right now. But it all will ultimately lead into where he gets to absolutely shine in how he creates. And of course, as
That's
you're mentioning, there's a lessening of the ego along the way.
that's but yeah, I don't want to go there yet. I'm not at that Buddhist state yet. No, but I do relate to, and again, it's, it's, I don't, I've heard a lot of people say in these 32 episodes, yeah, it's this, it's that, but I can't explain it, right? And so for me, um, yeah, I can't think of a better analogy than to say what I felt or, experienced the last 2 or 3 nights as we were going to sleep, where I was like, wait, and my body was, so the body's voice, and I've talked to some people about this, since I started this in January, has become a voice,
Mm-hmm,
like the Arcturians and like you know what I mean? It's actually
mm-hmm,
became a voice, and it's a very loud voice. And my body's saying to me, now that you've gotten here, she's going to sleep, and you're all right, feel yourself. And it wasn't just muscles, and it wasn't because my right foot got really damaged or whatever. It was because I was holding a certain, formation, a certain pose energetically based on the pressure, the repetitive pressure and my response to it in a way that I hadn't seen before. We all know we're getting deeper and deeper revelations and higher epiphanies, but it was something that okay, how do you say this shit? All right, so like um you talked about your connection to sacred sensuality, sacred sexuality, the power it is. I mean, obviously that connotates something that, we're conditioned and we go, oh, whatever, but we're talking about creative life force. And so and you would think in the human experience as we go through, we're like, oh, this is it. We're going to go into this room and there's going to be this, veiled bed with a dim light over it. And we're going to go into these silk sheets, that type of, you know what I mean? That type of power and purity and so on. That's what it felt like. So to be laying there and going, oh, I can let go. I'm not weak. I'm actually resting, rejuvenating, powering up, understanding, connecting to her, understanding, like, and it was a very multidimensional thing. And I really feel like and maybe you're right. Maybe it's some of us are cutting edge and it doesn't matter. But what you said about what will come for him, uh, I mean this. Like it's such a state, and I'm not a master at it. Please don't get me wrong. But how we get, on our journeys, we get these glimpses. We have these
mm-hmm.
little episodes, right? And then we want to get, that's the whole thing. It feels so noble and so regal, um, so humble and so powerful. It's like the last one you want to fuck with is that dude in the corner that doesn't say anything, kind of thing. And by the way, that's his queen in the middle of the dance floor. So that light you see there is in that shadow over there, something like that. That's just my way of explaining it. So I think it exemplifies, and it's in my own way and what you exemplify, something's really different now. And it's going to be interesting to see the personal choices, the physical thoughts, words, and actions that people take as they become more and more aware of the power of the energy, the power of creation that really is nothing to fuck with, you know. So if it's something of that profound formidableness, what's the other side of it? Wow.
Love it. I love it. I've been talking a lot with this transition about dissension because it's really essential. And dissension includes the integration of the body. It's bringing the light into the body. And the feminine wisdom has been living in the body. And so when the masculine descends from mental body, which holds a lot of distortion, that's been one of the most attacked spaces for the masculine in particular, but you could say that even collectively. And he descends into the body, sensation, heart. This is also connected to feminine wisdom. Then, when you're talking about that voice of the body, the feminine knows that voice. She's been connected to that voice. That voice has been leading her in so many different ways. And when the masculine can meet her here, we're meeting at ground level, baby. And we are creating Trinity effects, which are co creative energetics embodied. And this is how we create a new paradigm. I love
Do
it.
you okay, so I think I'm just curious about this because I respect your link to infinite intelligence and your intellect as well. And anyone that's had some time in this, one thing I can say for sure is, the broader your experience is and the more open your mind and heart and everything is, the more you have to work with. Um, so it's not about, right and wrong. It really isn't. Um, but I think in terms of okay, it's different. It's two different things, and it's changing. What we receive, and then as it materializes, you might say, we receive something that's pure. We run it through the channels, although it's evolving and ascending and becoming more aware, you might say, but we still produce it based on our perception and our thoughts, words, and actions. Um, and and so somewhere rooted in that uh, original corruption, you might say, or interference of the mother that you talked about at the beginning, um, everything got fucked, basically.
Mhm.
So we are females and males still in the experience, respecting and honoring the fact that we were here in these vessels, be they avatars or not, whatever, understanding we wouldn't have our consciousness here. At a minimum, it gives us some potential. Mars, Venus, male, female, that whole thing. How do we how do we bridge that gap? And I don't mean this for me, and I mean this in a way that how does this work? How do we, because regardless of what I do, let's put it this way, regardless of what I do, let's say I represent Todd in relation to Morgan, or let's say I represent Todd in relation to all masculine energy in a physical form, she still has to do it, right? It's like, how can how can I encourage that for that feminine to walk out there in full force. Now, knowing that she's not going to do it until the time is right, and I respect, and maybe I don't need to worry about it and just ride it out. But how does that work for the male that's the boots on the ground, and for the female with all the different experiences on both sides, boots on the ground? How does that convert? Or do we tap into, we went out to the ethers on the ascending part. Now we're down here in the dirt getting all the gold. Uh, honoring the human consciousness, honoring the ego, uh, utilizing our awareness. It comes more and more every day. How does that work? How can we do that? Is there a modality? Is there a process? Is there a way? Or do we just simply take the initiative?
Mm. I mean, we've been talking about the process the whole time throughout the entire conversation. What you have been showcasing through personal examples is the thing, is the process. There are many ways that we could talk about, and there are plenty of ways that I teach this, right? So it's like we could pop into different kind of ways of speaking about it. But it's been spoken about in this experience together the entire time. Um, when we're talking about things like him coming into connection with feminine integration, connection with himself by navigating into and through feminine integration, the opening, the surrendering, the letting go, the descending from mental into body and heart, and becoming more stable, right? Letting go of resistance, becoming more stable and spacious for her to step in, to feel like she is protected, she is honored, she is seen, she is supported, she is received, allows her to rise more up into her sovereign power. I speak about this in the coding of sovereign unity. The masculine moves into his heart, which is a center for unity. So he represents sovereignty as a base code. That's the wording that I use in my own teachings. And he moves into the heart, which is the unification piece. And the feminine is moving from a base code of unification and unity into her power, which is necessitated through her process of masculine integration, which allows her individuation, which allows her to speak fluidly her own voice, her sight, her knowing into a field of distortion that asks her to constantly lean into the gaslight. So she becomes her own individuated powerhouse and emanating from that place. And again, this is like, yes, each of them have their own kind of uh, integration and initiation processes and trajectories, but each are also in collaboration and support of each other. We've talked about this in your union and the process. I'm familiar because I've had my own relationships, right? Of like even bodily shared processes. And so when she steps into her power and she's like, I'm not available. Like, you'll hear me. I'm like, I'm not available for opinions. I'm not. That's because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I can't listen. I absolutely can. It's because my over listening, my over taking accountability, including for the masculine's part, was something that I had to move out of to be like, actually, no, I'm here to listen to the goddess, my voice, my process. That is where I'm supposed to lead from. And so stay inside of my process and my integrity, even if other people have ideas about what that means about me, even if it's not true. Still hold here, right? So she can do that and she can show up and she can be like, I am this true feminine voice. And she can speak it into fields of distortion where she is speaking penetrative, clear truth, coding, templating, and she is emanating. Her radiance is embodied, right? Her sovereignty is held. That's her true identity. She's holding it. So the masculine integration piece. And that will bring forward men that are at these pivotal points of actually stepping into themselves to see her, that are lessening the resistance. So again, I'm kind of speaking in a sacred figure eight where each doing their own part is in contribution to the other and in contribution to themselves. So this is kind of how I see it. One lens of how I see it and how I
No, I
experience.
think I mean, I think, I've been trying to grapple with things after, this period, right? This 12-year period. That's just how I, you know, context it. But, and it's like, I know I got into this as so many did, right? Regardless of, having been born with it, as many of us were, and then losing it and the whole thing. But you come to this point or points, these dark nights of the soul, these relations that, you know what I mean? It's a yin yang to everything. And I am soul. You come out going, I am soul. I'm connected. I know what, I'm getting something here. I'm going to stay with this. Fuck the law. Fuck this. Fuck that. And we all had our own way and we're all at the same place. And then it becomes, and maybe obviously I'm speaking from my perspective, but I still think everything is connected and parallel. As the individual goes, so goes the collective. As the couple goes, so goes a collective.
Hmm.
So you start to say, okay, uh, everything you said, spiritually, scientifically, and femininely, you know what I mean? With that wisdom, for me, it's like, okay, n now show me. Like, not you,
Hmm.
not her, not Trump, not this, not that, but you. Show
Hmm.
me. Oh,
Hmm.
so you're gonna walk away from all this stuff that makes sense. You've been homeless for 12, 14 years. You have a little stability. You end up in Mexico, boom, bomb, bomb, bomb. You're not doing anything. Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. A lot of people talked about that, letting everything go, let it deconstruct. Now you're coming out. Oh, I better go do this and I better promote this. But no, 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 no. Just keep doing this. It's very subtle. It's very deliberate. It's very steady. And she
Hmm.
is like the landscape, right? Like that's the way I see it. And I'm gifted to live across from this bay because that's it for me. I can even go to my balcony when I can't walk, you know, and I can connect. There's the mother. The
Hmm.
land is the father. She's all the rivers coming from the mountain. I mean, I see the whole network. And
Hmm.
like you said, but then to see it beyond the judgment, beyond the apparent differences, even of a masculine and feminine, even of a male and female in form, given all of our personal histories and ancestral, et cetera, to be able to actually come back to this place. Um, and the human being, fraught, phased, rattled, but still shows up, like you said.
Hmm.
That to me is I guess in my estimation anyway is the uniter, the equalizer is the mother.
Hmm.
I mean that's it, and we're doing it in human form, and there's no explanation for any
Hmm.
of us.
Yep. I love this. Oh, yeah. There
Thank
were
you.
times where you almost like asked the question and it came back to like the doing, like, how do we do it? And I kept feeling, well, the allowance and letting her in, letting her lead, listening, being receptive, taking the steps as she leads you into and through the unknown. And this is a kind of devotion and commitment and strength that I find is oftentimes overlooked by the external world that is more material, egoic based in trying to value the human. Those of us who are on an evolutionary path, the sacrifices that we have made, the losses that we have had, the things that we've been willing to let go of, all to listen, there is such tremendous value in who we are becoming, of the healing that we have done. Some of us are zeroing out our ancestry. We are doing collective work. We are changing the trajectory of the entire collective. That is a massive investment. That takes powerful souls willing to be in such deep devotion that they're willing to let go regardless of how others view them, and even to the point of making such grand sacrifices in the material that it is very disruptive to your human and your human life. However, this is not to be viewed as lesser. This is the moreness that you are choosing to come into despite all obstacles. And that takes grit and devotion and surrender and allowance and listening and skill building that maybe the overall material kind of collective doesn't value, but those of us like us, we see it, we feel it, and we are the ones that are leading. We are the ones that are making the greatest impact, regardless of what
Yeah.
it may look like at surface.
Yeah, and the power of less and less judgment, the power of walking the talk, pushing past, you know, is part of that. I mean, if if every single person, however many there may be, depending on what narrative you're following or what what conspiracy trail you're following, it doesn't matter. Um, of every one of the 8 billion people in the world had a phone, got a text message, voice message, whatever that said, we're going to meet at 2 o'clock UTC worldwide live. And we are going to meet in the circle of life and put our best intentions, highest level of unconditional love that we can engage with our free will to universal will. I wonder, I'm a man, all right, but I mean, I have to pose it this way. I wonder, and I say this to Morgan a lot, how many are there? Like, I wonder how many sisters would answer that call, which would not be the words, but would be the energy that they're so familiar and innately tapped into. Um, because, like you said, it only takes one, but where you have, where you have a group, like I seen a group of 18 in Morgan's thing, and this isn't like, what you used to see on TV back in the day. I'm much older than you with the healings and the revivals. 18 women taken into the circle, a woman with a lifelong history of multiple, just like you, right? Oh, there, but the grace of God goes me. And like that, everything changed. Everything in that woman's life changed. Health, mental, physical, everything changed. That's not an aberration. That's the energy that I'm talking about. And I don't know how to put it out there, but I feel like that is the most highly contagious, positively oriented, universal aligning energy or motion or action or effort I could take. I really feel like that coding is that eons and eons and eons of template formation that you referred to earlier. And this becomes tricky, especially as the masculine primarily represented in form in the male body, let's just might say, maybe that's a misperception, is coming to the point of approaching that fork in the road, you might say, that summit, um, to not lessen himself for the role that he plays.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see what I'm saying? Because
Oh, a
we
thousand
we
percent. I was thinking
so
it
many
before
of
you.
you know what I mean? Because so
Yeah.
many of us know that one of the first ways the universe speaks to us in this particular incarnation when we wake up is everything's upside down. What you think is there. So it only makes sense. Okay, so I don't have to carry all this weight. I just I'm like the sentry. I'm like, they talk about protector. But if I have a circle formed and it's all these mass, all of the brothers, whatever you want to call it, the fathers, yes, the first part of us that's going to see anything coming from the horizon is that circle. So I don't know. Have you heard of the telepathy tapes?
No, can I say something though? Because I'd love to share something
Oh, I'm
relative
sorry.
to you
Yeah, go
there.
ahead, please. I'm sorry. You really
No, don't
inspired me.
apologize. When you were talking about this, this idea of everyone receiving a text and coming together with these greater intentions, I was like, there are parts of me that were like, mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. And the reason why is because of the misdirection of that energy, because of those that come in and they choose to misuse the energy, to invert the energy, to infiltrate the energy, to use all of that power in a misused, dysfunctional, destructive way. And this is what we've been seeing. Why is that? Well, that's because of the missing masculine. When we have men like you're talking about that surround and they hold, they're in their roles, they're holding guard, they're deeply anchored, they can see from a distance the infiltrations, the threats that are nearing her, and they can hold that field for even one powerful woman, such as myself. We witness miracles at a true timeline level, because that's what priestesses do. Temples attached to timelines. That's why they destroyed temples, because then they took down the timelines. So if you take the divine right architecture of temple and you have the embodiments in human form of exactly that, and the missing masculine becomes the anchor grounded deeply there in his role, masculine, we can change this world. We cannot change this world without him. The masculine is absolutely essential. It does not happen without his participation, right? Like we can't be like, oh, the feminine. When we're talking about the feminine leads, we're not saying the feminine diminishes the masculine. Those are two different things. Sometimes people hear it that way, but that's not what's being said here. It's just talking about the divine right order of things and how we get things in a cohesive, harmonic, organic, formation. And when we're talking about the masculine's inclusion in this way, it shows his necessity and it shows his power. So for him to meet his true power, it's not going to come through a patriarchal matrix. It's going to
No,
come through divine right order.
that's what I was saying. Okay. So like at some level, he's he's picking up. I've even told her this like in the last 2, 3 weeks as we've gone through some stuff as so many people have. Hey, I'm actually seeing things like you do. I feel like you sometimes. Like I'm seeing things I've picked up or gotten to because of her verbalization or sharing of energy or code.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's coming in, and I believe it has been. It's just, it's just waves and waves and waves, right? But for the most part, and I don't like to say like, oh, those people over there are not awake and this and that. What I'm saying is the masculine incarnate as a whole um, is going, okay, this looks like drop it all. Like drop the arms, drop the armor, And the only experience that he has had, let's just say in our human lineage, okay, or that got corrupted as we came from our soul lineage into this, say, subhuman lineage timeline or whatever, is to totally surrender. And we're talking all the way. And we're talking not to a feminine, but to the patriarch, to the perceived masculine, to a perceived more powerful masculine power. We're talking sodomy. We're talking murder, torture.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking compromising your soul. We're talking going against, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I get, that's why I was saying earlier, how does that come together? Because she's still subjected to the human condition, regardless of who it is. I don't care if it's Amma, right? There's still that playing out, and it's playing out in him. So it's like four pieces. It's like human her, conscious incarnate, vice versa, and then you might say higher self or soul or divine masculine, divine feminine converging. Um, so I don't get discouraged. I've been going on X. This is on X. Spent a little time on YouTube and Facebook the last couple of months. I watch the waves of the collective movie, but I see this thread down here going like it's going like this in this new energy. And it is what we're talking about. And primarily that feminine energy coming out of a wider. It's a birth, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, like that.
And that's the thing is the part of the power of the feminine is that she calls you into the unknown where you must surrender and you don't have control. And so that's a part of what we're seeing collectively and evolutionarily, where I've said this before. I'm like, look, we don't control the outcome. We are participants, right? And so we can influence, but Gaia has more of a say. And ultimately, the original feminine has the ultimate say. If she chooses right now in collective evolution that there is a needed and necessary dissension to include masculine male bodied beings coming into their body where they have been dissociated, where they have been attached to distortions, they have to arrive into truth, then so it will be. There is no stopping it. There is only the willingness to surrender into it so that your resistance doesn't keep you in a state of suffering. That's it.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah,
the choice points.
yeah. Yeah, the other thing too that comes to mind. I'm sorry I kept you 30
Not at
minutes.
all. No,
Or
not at all. I'm enjoying it, so I'm good.
I mentioned this the other day. So the mother's all it's always been the mother for me, right? I mean, I can only speak for myself. Since I was a kid, and I was a Catholic, and it was Mother Mary. But I mean, it's energy's energy, etc. And but I guess in my post uh, awakening, from like 49 till now, she's come in obviously many times, but three primary times, and and presented that, you know, presented the abyss, the what I call the holy darkness. Like if hey, if that's who you are and what you really are about, then step in here. Not,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I feel. But this is the third time, and it's been different because the other two times were like it was like boom, like 2 o'clock in the morning, East Texas, sitting outside having a cigarette, and all of a sudden, all these beans show up, and boom, you're going to Sedona. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? This one has not been like that. This one has it's been kind of like the energy itself for myself in my relationship with myself, with Morgan, with this whole first part of the year. It's been subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm here. And I go, and like I said, I have the luxury of being able to go there and see her. And it's a bay that's, kind of like a sea, and everything is there, right? And it's all, you know what I mean? So it's very different. It feels like to me, and again, I'm probably speaking from the masculine perspective and trying to understand this. And thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you. But it's kind of like if you need to come here to rest, to cry, to be
Mm-hmm.
alone, to be with me, to re-energize, I'm here. But by the same token, this bay is my womb.
Mm-hmm.
You're here to seed. You see where the two mountains come together over there and the water goes out. That is the force of creation, new creation. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you're here, son, kind of thing. Right. And and I don't know how many men can relate to that. And I'm not trying to like make myself unique about it. I'm just saying, wow, what's this? As these, you have the human journey with yourself and with your partner, and et cetera. Um, so I don't know. I guess the last thing I would say is or ask, because I had so many things I wanted to ask you specific, but it was like the old paradigm. Now that I think about it, um, you know, I think I don't think I know, and I'm just providing information. I know it's difficult, and you may have said this earlier, and I can say in my own I love you, Morgan. I'm so happy to be, you learn things, but it took a long time, and I believe this is something that maybe we could broadcast a little bit to try to connect to our male incarnates. Um, is that I didn't understand, right? Like I was in the lower chakras, regardless of my work astrology, regardless of what people might have thought, there was still this element running. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not irrelevant, but this others come in now, and I'm starting to see things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess we're all in a hurry, but and maybe it's inevitable, but somehow or another, it for me it seems to be in the um, the broadcasting or the you know presentation of these eons and eons and eons of template formation coming into form. The patience, the knowing, right? That's, you know, like nukes ain't got nothing on that. Climate change got nothing on that. This
Yep.
is this is beyond that.
Yep. When I was talking about God's eyes, and I want to speak this for any men that are watching. Um, this is an example when you are speaking about how you are seeing, like you're seeing in ways how she has been seeing. This is the access that he is given when he earns it. It's not freely given. It's earned through his choices, through his participation, through the honor pieces, through the reverence, through his commitment to her, to meeting her, to meet himself, right? As he shows up to temple doors and to the goddess in this way, he is provided for in so many ways. And God's eyes is this a part that the a role that the masculine plays, because when he can meet her at that depth and in these spaces, his light is illumination. The masculine was birthed to see, to provide light to her, to the origination point of the goddess in the feminine, to mirror and reflect what it is that she is, to bring it into the material. So, where men do not see the feminine, restoration cannot happen. But the men that do the work and they come into these spaces of deconditioning and they start to gain this ability of attunement to the feminine, the combination of that becomes God eyes. And he becomes a very powerful, creative being, because his eyes are the light that illuminate the templates that she has been carrying devotionally in love to all of life to include him, so that can be materialized when the masculine steps up and meets her in this space. And that really is what it is, again, to be a new paradigm creator, to build the structure, the era of building that we're talking about earlier, to be the masculine that builds the structures through his ability to truly see her.
Which based on what I'm getting is the only thing that will stand because anything else won't work now.
It'll
Um,
collapse.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it won't work. I
Uh-huh.
mean, it's such a I mean, multi-dimensional doesn't even have it doesn't even contain all the streams. I mean, it's amazing what can happen um, in between the words under the surface. A lot, almost like a session. You'll do a session sometimes, and like 2 days later, like, holy shit, I didn't realize all that went down, um, because of the transfer from the energetic, for taking it into the physicality and conscious. But yeah, I really appreciate the conversation. I'd love to collaborate with you again, and those like you, um, and I'm really honored to be here with you. And I wish you the very best in all that you're doing. Blessings of grace to you and yours. And I look forward to connecting again. And I would encourage you to share your voice. I know you do, but yeah, because I think people use the word authenticity, but I see it as transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Transparent of my multi-dimensional consciousness of my soul embodied, however you want to put it, without, obviously you can't brag and stuff like that, or you know what I mean, because that's self-regulating. You know what I mean? The universe doesn't play, but I think it's very contagious, and I think it's important for I'll just say it, and again, it's a general statement, but for women to step up and
Mm-hmm.
in a way they never have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as the other side steps meets, like you said, meets. Obviously, don't go out there if you're not being met. I get that, but I think but it does happen. She takes that step, right? And that has to be considering the human condition for a male or female. Well, these downloads can challenge the ego, and then the same cycles play, and we go deeper and deeper into mastery, and so on through the spiral. But yeah, it's a powerful move, and it feels like um, that's what's happening. And to your point about what you said about them, almost like not in a bad way, because I know you weren't throwing shade, but like the males get the credit, like the male goes and does it, and they're like, oh, he gets a. I saw a thing a couple days ago on X. There was some legislation that they pushed through that you haven't seen out there, which had to do with revenge porn and kind of sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And Melania Trump went to the Congress personally to speak on. And the article was in regard to her being in his ear. And that, I'm not saying this happened, but this was the person's perspective, the writer, how, because she was a model, she's like a supermodel and all that. And, she'd done some soft porn films or whatever, that she was most likely sexually trafficked, and that she has really put this bug in his ear, which has really made him different in regard to the establishment, regardless of politics, and when it comes to sex trafficking and so on. But that's a good example to me. That part of it coming out. Like, if he came out and said, hey, I know I'm the president, I know this, I know that, you see me there, but this is the reason. See, and I know that's a literal example, but that type of presentation of the truth, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
all it would take.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds judgmental, but I mean, so it's really the same thing. I'm saying the same thing over and over, and I appreciate it. Um, yeah. So anyway, well, do you have? I put your bio in the second announcement. Do you have anything that you want to direct people to? You mentioned that you had some groups and you have a website and such, and I'm happy if you send them to me. I'll put them in the comments, or you can put them in the comments either way, YouTube, X, and Facebook.
Okay, yeah. The main thing is I would invite people to visit my website at trueselfembodied.com. There is a newsletter that I do monthly that is so high value. So I would definitely recommend getting on the newsletter. I come out with written transmissions, but more importantly, the video transmissions. And these are teaching transmissions. These are coded transmissions. These are going to support you in your personal process. There's even a newsletter archive on my website, and you can go back to some of the older transmissions and you can watch them linearly, and you will recognize the conscious scaffolding that happens. I'm really amazing with walking people through integrative and initiation type of processes. And that's also what that newsletter does. So it's really, really high value. And then all of my other service offerings, my one-on-one, my membership group, and everything's also, of course, on my website too. But definitely sign up for the newsletter.
Okay, cool. All right. All right. Well, we'll see you when we see you. And thank you for your service to humanity. And thank you for coming out and having this conversation, sharing space, sacred space with me and everybody else. And like I said, blessings of grace to you and yours.
Such a pleasure, Todd. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed our time
Yeah,
together.
it was great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll see y'all again tomorrow. We got your sister, Mary Costello's coming on.